An additional 450 troops are on their way to Iraq to help the military there fight back against ISIS. That request made during a meeting in Germany on the sidelines of the G7 summit. The White House says the president signed off on the plan after consulting with top U.S. commanders. The decision has drawn sharp criticism, though, from those who say a limited advise and train mission isn't enough to make a dent in ISIS. Sending more troops to Iraq, that's our topic this half hour. We want to hear from you on our Facebook page. You can also weigh in on Twitter. Be sure to use the hashtag Fox26for Life. Joining us live in the newsroom is our Roundup panel led by our senior legal analyst Chris Tritico, our public policy analyst Jackie Bally, and in for Mustafa, former chair of the Harris County Democratic Party, Jerry Bernberg. All right, guys, so what do you think? Too little, too late?
Well, this dates back to George Bush's days when he negotiated a status of forces agreement when he left that required the United States to leave. Iraq would not negotiate a new status of forces agreement with President Obama. That caused us to leave. The simple fact of the matter is the United States destabilized Iraq when we went in there, and it is our duty now to go back in and fix this problem. But without a status of forces agreement, we can't go in. We can't go in there and send ground troops in there without an agreement with Iraq on how those forces will be treated under Iraqi law. It's a huge problem that was created by the United States, which is incumbent upon us to figure out a way and a solution to fix this problem, Jerry.
Boy, you've got that really right, Chris. I'm quite impressed. In addition to that, I think it's important for folks to realize that the military is opposed to sending any more troops into Iraq. They say this is a sectarian and a religious conflict between the Shias and the Sunnis that has been exacerbated by the mistreatment of the Sunnis after we took out the Sunnis and disbanded the army. Most of the people in ISIL and the leadership, at least, are the old Baathists, the military from the Saddam regime. So the military says the only thing our folks can do there now is die, and we don't want to send anybody more. The president, at the urging of the State Department, agreed to send 450 more people to try to assist the Iraqis in retaking some of the territory. But it's not, the military says that won't work, and we don't want more Americans dying over there.
And that's the general feeling of the American public is we're tired of this war. But I get back to my main point. We did this. Don't we have a duty to fix it?
Well, I'm going to first answer Sally's question. It is too little too late, and the reason why the military is opposed to the latest round of actions is because 450, even though we're saying, yes, we're going to do this, it will have such a little impact unless we have a really comprehensive strategy, unless we have support of the surrounding, of the troops in the surrounding areas to actually go in there with our troops and defeat them, unless we interrupt their recruiting efforts, unless we interrupt their financial efforts. This is really, sending 450 people is really going to have minimal impact.
Well, this is just training, though. This is training the Iraqi army, those 450. There's not fighting troops.
But what are we going to do after that? Are we then going to send our troops on the ground? Are we then going to have more aggressive airstrikes? What are we going to do after that? And that's really what's leading up to all of this. Those are the questions we now need to answer.
All right, let me go to Sally. She's monitoring our social media. Sally?
You got me? There we are. First up, you got Michael. He is commenting to the president. He says, you need to give an Oval Office speech about Iraq. No more troops, you promised. What is the strategy there in Iraq? An election issue? And then this person says he'll need to send way more than 450 troops. He says too little, too late.
Well, if the president's using this as an election issue, that's the worst advice he's ever received, because it's not a good election issue. Nobody wants us back in Iraq. The problem is we have to stabilize that region, and so it's certainly not a political question for the president. He doesn't want to do it.
Nor does the military, and that's important. And I don't think there's any evidence that, Jackie, that in fact the military has said, well, let us have 10,000 or 15,000 and that'll be fine. The military doesn't want any more American blood shed in Iraq, because until the Iraqis can take care of their sectarian problems, that is the Sunnis against the Shias, and you know, Iran entering into that, and those various issues, it doesn't matter how many people we send in there, it's not going to do any good.
I don't think I made a statement contrary to that.
Oh, okay.
My statement was
Where do we go from here?
where do we go from
Yeah.
here? We need to have a comprehensive
This
plan.
is really kind of the same thing as the breakup of Yugoslavia in the three countries that created Yugoslavia, and then as soon as it broke up, they all started fighting. It's the same thing. How do we as the United States say to these people, you got to get along?
Well, it's not by
But we
sending more troops.
But that's not, is that really, I think the real question is that our job? Is it our job to say to these people, we don't get along? We need them to get along for just economic prosperity and all of the other things, but is it our job to send our troops in there to make sure they get along? That's the main question. A majority of Americans are saying no. The military is saying no. If we're going to put 450 people on for training purposes, whatever the purpose that they're going in there for, let's at least have a comprehensive plan saying, we're going to start off with the troops. This is how you're going to be helpful. But right now, we don't even know. We're not going to hear that. We don't know that. And so we're saying, look, it's not our job to help you get along.
Isn't the answer to your question generally no, it's not our job, but for we created this problem?
We didn't create the problem. We didn't create the war out there.
Oh, yes, we did.
We destabilized that country.
Oh, yeah,
We
it's not
didn't-
just destabilized. In point of fact, when we disbanded the Ba'athist army and armed forces, we forced them into ISIL. Ultimately, what
These
came
two
there.
forces were going to come into their own. I don't want to call it a war, but those two forces were going to happen, and we did not create that
Like it.
situation.
Go ahead.
When we went there, we tried to stabilize, we tried to keep the peace. We saw that we could not do that, but we did not create that situation.
Like him or not, like his rule or not, Saddam Hussein had that country under control. And when we took him out and we put his party out of power, that created the political vacuum that is ISIL today, isn't it?
That's absolutely the case. And the point is, the problem is, when you say we need them to get along, it's not our fight whether they get along or not. If those folks don't get along, there's no way for us to control ISIL. That's the reality.
And
they have to work together to get rid of ISIL.
and-
We can't do it for them.
I'm sorry, and along with that, you have the problem of Iran.
My point is, it's not our job to put our troops in there to make sure that they get along. We're going to have to come up with some kind of plan to work with the surrounding nations who are actually our friends, are actually our allies, maybe work with them comprehensively to try to defeat ISIS.
Guess what?
But
We found something else we agree on.
And that would be a great plan if there was anybody willing to step up. But, you know, now that the coalition that we put together to invade Iraq is broken up, who's willing to step up and help?
Well,
Other than Iran.
I think part of the problem, and I know this is where we're going to disagree again,
Okay.
I think part of the problem is when you have Secretary of State Kerry who's downplaying a lot of what has been going on, and up until recently, up until the beheading, our own president was downplaying. I think other countries were not willing to step up because they're saying Americans are really saying there's not too much of a problem. Only until the beheading started, then did we finally get the attention of the current administration and the president.
Except the irony is the State Department is who's been pushing for more troops. The Defense Department has been pushing for fewer.